probably tuning in right now because you have a dirty steering wheel. Maybe you even have a dirty and sticky steering wheel. Well, hey party people, how do we clean a steering wheel? So my weapon of choice today, Fabric Clean by Chemical Guys, diluted down 20:1, which is as per their label instructions. Now in simple terms, you grab a microfiber cloth, you douse it a few times with the cleaner, and you just rub like this. Now this car, I don't know how well it's going to show up, but that actually pulled up more dirt than I thought. Despite the material of your steering wheel, this one happens to be made out of leather. Yours might be vinyl, it matters not. What the industry wants you to believe is that you need a dedicated leather cleaner in order to treat and clean the sensitive product called leather. Well, the reality is that virtually every leather used within a car is what's called coated leather, which means it has a synthetic clear coating on top of the leather. So this means that it's a natural product that has been coated with an synthetic coating. That is the good news, because maintenance and care and durability is enhanced because the leather has been coated, which then means you're not actually cleaning leather. You're cleaning a synthetic coating, which then translates into, wait a minute, I probably don't have to overthink it. I probably don't need a dedicated leather cleaner, which is exactly what Darren's telling you. You don't need that. Now you in audience land, if you're cynical, you may say, hey Darren, you don't know what you're talking about. You're blowing sunshine out my butt. You actually just pulled dye off of this steering wheel and you don't know it, and now you're teaching your ignorant audience that that's acceptable, when in fact you really do need a dedicated leather cleaner, Darren. Well, fine. If that's your belief system, then I'm fine. I'm only speaking from 35 years of experience and know that an all-purpose cleaner, an upholstery shampoo, basically a cleaner of some kind, is going to work on your leather, and you don't have to buy a dedicated leather cleaner. So this car only has 2,500 miles on it. It's a 2024 Cadillac leather steering wheel. Now this feels good. It feels better than it does here because I haven't cleaned here. So if I'm going to be hypercritical, I would say, yes, this feels a little dirty. I know, because I have not cleaned it yet, that it needs to be cleaned, despite it only having 2,500 miles on it. Once again, prevention is always better than the cure. So this is Darren showing you how easy prevention can be. And you just rub it aggressively on the steering wheel. Hey Joe. And that treats the steering wheel itself. You're done. But wait, you're probably here because you've kicked that can down the road too far. Now your steering wheel is tacky, gooey, really, really dirty, and you realize, Darren, that's not gonna work for me. I need something more aggressive. Okay, glad you asked. At this point, I would tell you have two options: scrub pad, scrub brush. Now this happens to be a boar's hair scrub brush. Very, very gentle, very, very soft. In my opinion, I wouldn't reach for this, but because I know most of you will be in hyper conscientious mode, like, oh, it's still leather, I wanna be safe, and I'm kind of worried because I've been indoctrinated by the industry, and I want to be safe. It's like, okay, fine. So let me just tell you the trade-offs. This is my preferred weapon of choice as far as cleaning if this is not going to work. Why? Because these things called bristles. For example, I have not put any cleaner on this. This is completely dry. But let's say I've now doused this with cleaner, or I've doused this with cleaner. Now, if I were to douse this with cleaner, where do you think all that overspray is going to go that is not caught by the steering wheel itself? Well, it's going to go here, which can be very intricate, full of all kind of nuances and intricacies of the dash. Now you've just created more work for yourself, because now you're going to have to clean the dirt that's already there, and now you just added some additional work for yourself. Not a good proposition. Therefore, you may say, oh, well, I'll just squirt it onto the bristles themselves and contain it. Well, as you're scrubbing, guess what happens? And actually you can see some of the dust that gets kicked off of this. I don't know if it's showing up actually, but the point is as you're scrubbing like this and this and this, every time these bristles flick off the edge of this surface, it's going to flick some of your cleaner onto the surrounding area. So the simple answer, if you wanted to use a bristle brush like that, would be to cover the dash with some type of prophylactic, cloths, towel, you pick your weapon of choice, do something. Or you stick to a scrub pad like this. Now the trade-off with this is this thing called gravity, because as I use this more and more and it becomes more and more saturated, this is synthetic fibers. They don't really absorb the liquid. So that's kind of the good news and the bad news. The good news is that the most of the liquid is being used for what you want it to be used for, which is cleaning. The problem is gravity, it will constantly pull this liquid down and you'll start getting a big drip mess onto your lap and onto the seat and onto the floor mat of the dirty solution as you're scrubbing on the steering wheel. That's something to watch out for. One of the reasons I do love this pad is that it does contain the mess as you're working, more so than a bristled scrub brush like this. So you can wrap it around the steering wheel, get the front and back simultaneously, and it's good to go. One of the tricky things about anything that's circular in shape and moves, for example, you've got 4 wheels and tires, they rotate. So when they're in a static or stationary position, you are inspecting it like this and you think, oh yes, I nailed the details. It's clean, I can see it's clean. But then Johnny customer gets in the car and drives it, and now this wheel moves, and now it's going to reveal areas that you might have missed, and I can assure you, you will have missed if you do not take the time to rotate the wheel in the moment. So as a professional, I will clean and detail the steering wheel to what I consider perfection, and then I will rotate it 180 degrees so that my perspective has now been altered. Now, what used to be facing down is now facing up. So rather than me climbing underneath the steering wheel and trying to scrutinize it and assess it and perform a final inspection on it, now I just rotated it, and now I can see, which will be very revealing to you, wow, I thought it was so thorough in cleaning the steering wheel, when in fact I realized that I failed. I'm gonna give myself a B- for diligence and conscientiousness. But that's why you rotate the wheel, which is why when I'm cleaning wheels and tires, I always rotate the wheels 180 degrees to verify my work. That's before I ever even do the final inspection. So that's something that you need to know about a steering wheel. Also, not all steering wheels are designed the same. They are truly unique. So for example, this steering wheel has some stitching that's exposed. It's got 4 seams where the panels come together. So here you have a seam, and then you've got the stitching on the inside. Now, because the car's so new, it's not a problem. But what happens, which is probably why you're here, is that you have an excess amount of dirt that is accumulated, and now you've got to clean an excessive amount of dirt, which means, especially if you're a woman, because women, they use this stuff called makeup, and a lot of women don't like to wash their hands, or they fail to wash their hands, and so they have all this makeup on their hands. They come into the car, and now they're driving along, and week after week, month after month goes along, and that makeup builds up onto their steering wheel and creates a big fat gooey mess, and it will get into the intricacies of the stitching, which means that if you have a pad like this that remains mostly flat, even though you can contour it, it's still going to remain mostly flat and glide over the high points of the intricacies of the stitching and the ribbing and the panel seams, which means you're gonna have to reach for some kind of detailing brush so that you can finesse the seams like that. Now this is dry because I don't want to flick a bunch of cleaning solution onto the dash here, but this is where you have to respond based on the moment. So if I'm required to use a brush like this, I will create a curtain, a prophylactic curtain. How about that? So I could hold up my microfiber cloth like this, and I could scrub like this, and it's going to contain the overspray, or whatever you want to call that stuff that's going to flip off as I use the bristles. And I just go around and I do this, that, this, that, and this is how I contain my overspray. And then, like every area of the interior or exterior, is you break it down section by section. So you start with the macro and you work your way down into the micro, the big into the smaller. Label it however you want. So here we have the whole driver's cockpit steering wheel assembly, steering column, the control arms, the different components. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff to clean here. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of details going on here. So you break it down, like you do it in a systematic approach. What makes sense? For me, in my world, what makes sense is I start with the steering wheel itself, and I work my way in, and then I work my way from here backwards. So I'm gonna start with the wheel itself, then I'm gonna deal with the hub and all the instruments and controls on here, the steering wheel spokes here. I'm gonna look on the back side, and you literally break it down section by section, component by component.